Hi, welcome to the session. This is to look at definitions of abnormality for Paper 1, AQA Psychology, the Psychopathology section. In this session, we're briefly going to look at another definition of abnormality. This time, it's called deviation from ideal mental health. By the end of this session, you should be able to describe this definition and to be able to give strengths and weaknesses. You will need to refer to your course booklet and to the photocopies that you've been given in class. So this definition is quite different from all the others in that there is a complete shift in focus. And we are now looking at the work of Marie Jahodas. Again, I want to highlight the fact that this is a female in psychology, which is quite interesting for gender. And you might need to use this when you look at issues in gender. So the shift in focus here is from quite negative to positive. Instead of looking at what the problems are, this time we are looking at what makes people normal. So Jahodas was interested in what was the ideal mental health. So think about for a few minutes what you would consider to be mentally healthy. Would it be somebody who is able to hold down a job? Would it be somebody who doesn't do anything that would be considered eccentric? What would it be? Consider what the factors would be that would contribute to somebody having an ideal mental health. What does it mean to us to be psychologically healthy? Does this mean that we don't suffer from stress? Does it mean that we don't fall out with people? Does it mean that we come to reasonable conclusions? Think about exactly what it means to be psychologically healthy. So here's a quote from Marie Jahodas, who said, "The absence of mental illness is not a sufficient indicator of mental health." So Jahodas defined several different parts to what is considered to be mental healthy. You do need to know these, at least know some of them, or at least be able to recognise them. So even if you don't know the names of them, i.e. self-attitudes, please just make sure that you have a rough idea as to what they consist of. So in order to be psychologically healthy, we must have high self-esteem and a strong sense of identity. Again, having high self-esteem all the time is quite hard, and this could potentially be one of the problems, that it's maybe impossible to achieve all this criteria. The next one is personal growth. This should be somebody who is working towards self-actualization. If you think back to the humanistic approach to Maslow, the idea of right at the top of the pyramid, achieving self-actualization. Again, it could be argued that very few people have ever actually achieved self-actualization, and therefore this might not be a realistic goal. Next, integration. This is somebody who is largely resistant to stress and is able to help other people cope with stress. They have good psychological function. They have great self-attitude and they are in a growth mindset. Again, I think from time to time we all suffer with stress and perhaps are not all as resistant as we would like to be. Autonomy. I think I refer to this quite a lot in class. This is the extent to which you are free of social influences and you can rely on your own resources. So how independent you are. An autonomous human being is somebody who truly thinks and behaves for themselves. Again, there are times when we're not able to do this. This is an easy one, perception of reality. You must have an accurate perception of reality. And again, I think most people who do not have a mental illness do have an accurate perception of reality. But there are times, particularly when we're hurt or upset, that our perception of reality does become quite distorted. And finally, it's called environmental mastery, but this is how successful somebody is, how adequately they are able to function in society. So, can they have interpersonal relationships? Are they able to love? Are they effective at problem solving? These are all the factors that Jahodas says we must meet as a human being in order to have the ideal mental health. Please make sure that you are able to remember these to an extent. They're all vital, so that if you're asked to discuss some of the features that Jahoda considers to be ideal mental health, you are able to mention at least some of them. Again, you could be asked an applied question where you are asked to consider what parts of ideal mental health correspond to the STEM. So, strength of this. Well, probably the first strength is that it does cover a very broad range of criteria. So it's very inclusive, it's very holistic. It does cover a lot. It covers nearly all the reasons why somebody might want to seek help. So, therefore, we could conclude that this is quite a useful and practical tool when thinking about mental health. It's also very positive. It looks at the positive features of what people have rather than what they haven't got. Now looking at the weaknesses. The first weakness, as with everything in this section, is cultural relativism. Some of the ideas in this criteria are very specific to Western European and North American cultures, therefore it is culture bound. Think about things that we believe are important in our culture, such as a sense of autonomy. If you go into some non-Western cultures, you find that autonomy is not something that people aspire to have. Self-actualization focuses on personal achievement, but some cultures see this as being self-indulgent. So, for example, they're more concerned with their family than they are. An example here is that in Native American Indian culture, the focus is on contributing to the family and to the community. Again, this weakens this definition as it suggests that it's not holistic and doesn't apply to every culture. You'll find this in your handouts. Here is an example of an applied question. This article appeared in a magazine about hoarding disorder. Most of us are able to throw away the things we don't need on a daily basis. Approximately 1 in 1,000 people suffer from hoarding disorder. This is defined as a difficulty parting with items and possessions, which leads to severe anxiety and extreme clutter that affects living or workspaces. Apart from deviation from ideal mental health, outline 3 definitions of abnormality and refer to the article above in your answer. So for this, we would have to refer to statistical deviation, and this would be on the basis that only 1 in 1,000 people actually have this hoarding disorder. Therefore, it is statistically rare. Therefore, this definition could be explained in this. We would look at deviation from social norms. So it's quite difficult here to think about how this totally deviates from social norms, except that it is not normal in this sense to keep hold of items that are no longer needed. And therefore you could argue that this goes against the norms, the idea of disposing of clutter and things that we don't need. Again, the anxiety would be considered not something that the average person would experience. Failure to function adequately. The bit that this focuses on is that it affects living. This disorder has actually affected the person's living, and that's how we would bring that element in. This ends the session on deviation from ideal mental health. Please ensure that you are able to fully explain all 4 definitions and evaluate them. Thank you.